get started.
It is time.
Welcome to the Wood Air Metal Podcast. Yeah.
Welcome.
We have a special guest today. It's our first interview.
First interview, the first victim.
We saved the first for first. And let me tell you a little bit about our guest. So, present to you the wonderful and sophisticated and funny Brandon Coleman, who Brandon is on the rise in demand as a performer in the world of creative guitar playing and music. Brandon is based out of Cincinnati, Ohio at this point in his life, performs and composes in a large variety of inspired music called intricate, cinematic, personal with a touch of his idols and roots from the Appalachian Mountain territory. Got that from your bio. Nice. Coleman, I'm going to call him Coleman, which I've never actually called him that before. Regularly performs on records with his own groups like Fourth Kind and Brandon Coleman Trio, Fusion Powerhouse, Spherical Agenda. They hate the flat earthers, obviously. Renowned saxophonist Randy Villars he's played with, Sam Blakeslee's Quintet and large ensembles, and actually there's a new record we'll have to ask you about. Just came out.
Yeah, we will be trying.
Plays with Grammy-Nominated Dan, is it Pugach?
Pugach,
yeah. Nonet and jam rock band Miller. He didn't write, I noticed here, Noah Preminger, which I've seen you play with a bit.
Yeah.
Great sax player. Brandon has played all over the world, including notable jazz venues like Smalls, 55 Bar, Bar Next Door, Bop Stop, had the Cleveland Plug, Club Bonafide, and many more. Plus festivals in New York City, Ecuador, and many more. Brandon is an inspiring modern guitarist, navigating today's latest landscapes of social media, multi-venture, multi-style mastery. I'm giving you some extra verbiage here.
Oh, man.
Along with all that, Brandon has been instrumental in growing musical venues like the Golden Mean, and he has a collaborative recording studio. I'm not sure if that's called the Golden Mean now. I meant to look it up.
Yeah. It's still the Golden Mean.
And in the greater Cincinnati area, including recording and producing artists from all over the place. Let's not forget to mention Brandon is an incredible guitarist and musician. Monster ears. I'm told by Brandon, a world-class reader, and seemingly boundless by any conventions. We're glad to present to you the one and only Brandon Scott Coleman.
It's an honor, fellas. Thanks so much for having me.
You got to get an applause track going at that particular point.
That's right.
The crowd goes wild.
Awesome.
Oh, man.
What's happening, man?
Man, just another day in, post-apocalyptic paradise.
Post-apocalyptic musician paradise. It's even stranger. What do you contribute to a post-apocalyptic landscape as a musician?
Oh, man. I just like to imagine, if we were in some hellscape, it would just be only the worst of gigs. I haven't played a gig in so long, so I don't even know what that feels like anymore. But just roaming around, scavenging for rat carcasses, and then just playing horrible background gigs.
Pretty much. Yeah. I wonder when the rat carcass thing starts. I'm ready for it.
I think next week. I think they said that's when they were going to roll that out. So
you grew up in Kentucky. I grew up in West Virginia, so I think we're set.
We've had squirrel.
We were born for it.
We've had squirrel gravy and all that stuff.
I'm just from Buffalo, so I just sit there and get bitter about sports teams and eat chicken wings.
Yeah, you got wings, so
yeah,
you can't complain about anything. Yeah.
And it said gut strings will make a comeback, from all the rat carcasses. It's rat gut strings. There's a plus. There's a plus. So cool.
It's a huge plus. Yeah.
All right. Well,
we're off to a good start.
Yeah, we are off to a good start. We got some rat gut post-apocalyptic strings, and we'll just move on from there. And on that note, how did you get started playing guitar?
Oh man, yeah, that's a good question. So, being a Kentucky boy, my family is all based around there. A lot of them still are, and a big part of the culture and like a lot of America is a lot of people played guitar, banjo, fiddle. A bunch of people sang. So it was a super like family involved thing for me and my family. So there was always guitars around at every family gathering, and my grandpa played, my mom played, all my uncles and aunts, and everybody did something musical. Even if they didn't consider themselves a musician, they still did it. So I took a liking to it pretty young. Whenever I saw a guitar, I would go up and strum it, or my grandpa would play a chord and let me, go play it with my finger or whatever. So my parents got me my first Stratocaster when I was 11. And that was the Squier Strat Pack. I think most of us probably started that way.
Were there?
I just want to make sure. Are you guys getting a delay?
Yeah, we are. It's doing a weird thing.
Let me see if I can fix that real quick. A little buffer. There we go. That should be better.
Oh man, sounds good.
All right, sick. So yeah, what were you saying there before the audio?
So you mentioned the Squier. So were there guitars and stuff around the house? Was there musical instruments around?
Yeah, my mom, since she played, she had this like little Yamaha classical guitar, like a 70s Japanese Yamaha that I still have back home of hers, and so that was always around, and she'd be playing songs. And I was at my grandparents a lot. My grandpa had a ton of guitars. He had some Gretches and an Ovation classical and a couple flat tops and things like that. But yeah, I got my Squier when I was 11, and it just started from there. Family would show me chords and songs, and I just fell in love with it. I couldn't stop playing. It was like literally an obsession where I'd get home from school and just play until I fell asleep.
Sounds familiar.
And yeah, man.
Could be the interwebs.
We'll just roll this way. That's probably perfectly fine, right?
So far, so good.
There's some static, but it's better than it was for sure. So
sick. I'm just rolling with the built-in mic on the camera now. I think the computer was having a hard time keeping up with this guy.
Gotcha. Yep.
All right.
Must have been a Mac.
So,
hey.
Yep. So yeah, as we were saying before, the gremlins invaded the audio realm. The guitars were around. There's all kinds of folk tunes and stuff my grandpa would show me, like Doc Watson and Chet Atkins tunes, and
that's cool.
My mom played those tunes too because he taught her when she was young. So there was just like kind of a collection of material that was kind of the whole family knew, like all these Chet Atkins things, like Windy and Warm, and like the old Doc Watson. It's like a folk tune, but Doc Watson made it famous, that Shady Grove, which we'll talk about it later, but I reimagined that and arranged it for Sam's new record. That's going to be really cool.
Oh, cool.
Sweet.
It just jumped off from there. And, it's about that time when internet was like becoming more prevalent in the home, and things like Napster were around, and for better or worse. But for me, it was nice because growing up in such a rural area, there wasn't a lot of access to like outside things that weren't like, just normal radio stuff,
Yeah.
And one of my dad's friends who lived in Louisville, like heard I started playing guitar and like gave my dad a Tribal Tech CD and was like, "Give this to your son, please."
Oh, nice, really? How old were you then?
And I was probably like 12.
Holy crap.
And it just blew me away. I was just like, holy shit, this is incredible. Because it's like, Scott Henderson, who's one of my favorite guitar players of all time.
Yeah.
But I was like, this guy sounds like Jimi Hendrix, but like on acid or something. It's like crazy. It's just like all the chords and the harmony, and it just blew me away. So it just started me down this rabbit hole of I got hungry for whatever music I could find. By the time I was like 14, I was like listening to some of the weirdest music a 14-year-old should be listening to. Like I'd listened to like the complete Zappa discography, but I'd like gone into like the Harry Parch rabbit hole, and like it didn't yield like popularity or anything, that's for sure. Like being a kid with like the MP3 player in, listening to like some like Fred Frith or some, you know, like some real out stuff.
Nice.
But I just fell in love with
So
the possibilities.
were you trying to get bands or anything going, or was anyone playing, or was it mostly just
There were,
at home?
you know, it was mostly at home, like playing with family, and like some of my friends played, like some of my good buddies also played guitar. There wasn't anybody that was like super, super like as into it as I was, like to the degree of like wanting to get really, really, really good at it. It was kind of a bunch of guys wanting to play some riffs and stuff, and that's super fun too. So we would have jams and stuff with buddies, but I had like a garage band with some friends, but it was like for 3 weeks, and it just wasn't very good. And I think we all can admit that, but I still have recordings of it too. But it was super fun, and I mean, just the feeling of playing with people was something that I got hooked on too. But I also knew that it's like, man, this would be really fun if it was with some people who were like as into it as I am, because I was just like way into it. But yeah, I mean, that passion, I mean, it's still there, but I just thinking about it and reflecting on it, it's just, I think that time period was a very fertile time. And I mentioned the internet, you know, being a thing, and the fact that I had to wait all night to download like one song, like it still had that sense of like discovery that, like, I imagine that like when you got a vinyl record back in the 70s or something, where you're like, I don't even know what this sounds like until I get it home, but it's got a cool album cover.
Right.
Yep.
Like at least with slow internet, I had a similar experience of like, oh, Frank Zappa, a Black Page. I've heard about this in magazines, but I have no idea what it sounds like. And then like I stay up all night waiting, and then it's just like the payoff of hearing it. You still had to do like a good amount of research, I feel like, back in the late 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, it's
like
like that early internet, you'd kind of follow breadcrumbs, right? Like, you get a little thing, and then you'd find some forum, or then that forum would send you to some other forum, and then
like I remember the Guitar Oblique,
right,
the forums, and like we've both been members of that community for a while, and I remember finding that when I was maybe like 15 or something like that.
Sure.
And it was just, that led so many pathways of just madness.
Yeah, Adam, are you familiar with that? Probably not too much. I think I've added you to the group a few times. There was a guy, Mark Worrell, who's had many names over the years.
Bophatron, Sophosaurus.
Infinite Ego. Some different monikers, I guess. But yeah, I think that's probably how Brandon and I knew about each other, at least, originally.
Yeah, I think through those forums on Facebook,
And then, he just had like these ideas about how like guitar, like extreme guitar or something like that, you know, like all the more like really like how do you play like Buckethead or something like that stuff, and sort of get sucked into it. I tell Mark, I'm like, man, I could have been so rich if I never read your stupid webpage.
It's all his fault.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Oh man.
So you did the internet thing. So when did you decide? So had you already decided like music was it? Like, were you already there before college and all that stuff? And then how did you get? Like, did you have to convince your parents that you were going to do music, or they already kind of know, or like how did the next couple steps go?
It's kind of funny. Like, I didn't really have a reference point as to like what a professional musician would even look like. I think I had some extended family that were like successful musicians, like in Nashville and stuff, but I never really got to meet them until I was older. And like my frame of reference for what a musician looked like was either like a private teacher at a music store, or like a band director, or somebody who just plays on the weekends, which are all totally valid things and are necessary and good. But I didn't know that like it was even feasible to be like anything else other than those options, because it just wasn't around. But I remember when I was deciding on college, I actually applied to school to become like a pre-law major. For whatever reason, I mean, my dad was a lawyer, or he still is, and I had a knack for that kind of thing too. I didn't really love it, but it just seemed like, oh, that's the college thing. I should study something that'll make me money. But then, like, I remember like applying and choosing schools, and then seeing on like one of these papers, and I ended up going to Morehead State for undergrad, that you could major in jazz guitar. And I didn't know that that was even a possibility. Like, that had never entered my mind as something you could even major in. I thought if I majored in music, it would have to be like I had to start playing oboe or something, you know, like.
So you didn't get like the MI and like Berkeley magazine things or any of that crap when you were?
I did get the Berkeley magazines, and I had a slightly older cousin that went to Berkeley for a semester, and he hated it, and like.
Oh, so just
like. I just kind of like, kind of like, I was like, I don't know, maybe that's not for me. But then, like, when I saw like I could major in like jazz guitar, but also at like a smaller college, and being a small town boy, like, it wasn't super overwhelming. Yeah. So like literally, like, on the day, like, I registered for class, I just like changed my major to jazz guitar, and then I had to like go last minute audition for the music program and all that stuff, and that went fine because I had gotten into jazz at that point and taught myself some things in the back of the band room, you know, like, so it was okay. But really, that was the moment where I was like, that's like really the only thing that makes me super happy is like just working on music all the time. Mm-hmm. I mean, unless, you know, I also love weird computer things too. That could have been a possibility, but yeah, I mean, I just decided there. It was kind of like a reaction in a way, like, man, I really don't want to be in a law office all day. I kind of hate that. So, but yeah, I mean, I made that decision and never looked back. It's just everything from there, you know. I feel like the school part of my life is the most boring part, though. Like, yeah, it was a great experience. Like, I had wonderful teachers and classmates, and I think the biggest thing I got out of it was all the wonderful relationships with people. Yeah. But then again, like, sometimes I'm like thinking about myself as a musician, like what that means. And I'm like, like, oh, I'm a white guy that went to college. Like, that's kind of like boring. So I got to come up with my origin story. Like, I was born in a radioactive pit filled with old Diodario elixir and strings.
Kentucky, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty good there.
I didn't think they let that over the border. What's going on? Yeah.
Yeah, I had to fake my birth certificate to be let into Ohio, you know. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, school was great too. I mean, it was interesting because, like, even in Morehead, I didn't really have a clear picture of what this would mean, you know, because Morehead was a smaller town than the small town I grew up in. Like, it was just like, in terms of town size, it was like a third of the size. But it being a college town, there was like an arts and culture scene around it in some degree. Like, there were places to go play and places to go hear your friends play and go drink coffee and listen to records at the weird, you know, local artsy coffee shop, that kind of thing.
So once you got to college, then did you start playing gigs then more, or?
Yeah, you know, I started forming groups with some of my friends. Like, one of the first things we did, like many other people, was like form a fusion group that played Schofield tunes. You got to play those Schofield Medeski tunes, you know, all that stuff. And we were called the Hard Quartet. Great name. We played at this local Cajun spot, and we'd play all the parties like that our friends would have, you know.
Nice.
And that was a cool feeling, just like playing live with other musicians that were serious about it, but also just having a good time. Like, I got hooked on that. It made me hooked on it even more, you know. And I started a rock band. Like, I was in a rock band, like an indie rock band called the Saturn 4 or Saturn 5. for a while. No, Saturn IV. Sorry, I'm thinking about the actual rocket, but it's Saturn IV. But that was cool. It's like kind of like a 90s kind of Marcy Playground-esque sounding band, and we did a lot of local touring, like long weekend kind of things, like playing Lexington and Huntington, West Virginia, and sleeping in vans and all that stuff.
Nice.
And that was really fun too. I mean, just that whole experience of like, playing music, and honestly, just the feeling of seeing people be happy and enjoy it was just like, oh, you can play some weird notes and people having a good time. Like that's pretty cool. It's a good deal, and occasionally get paid for it.
Used to.
Yeah. Used to. Yeah.
Exactly.
Now we got to eat those rat carcasses.
Yeah. Hey, at least there's some out there. I remember my day when there wasn't any.
There's also strings from the rat carcasses, so that's a plus. It's
Exactly.
Classical guitarists can't get off the strings. Come on, man.
They're gut. That's like period instrument for me.
Yeah, man. We're gonna string up our theorbos with it.
That's the real tortoiseshell picks. Right?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, man.
The orbos, the extended range of the lutes.
That's right. Oh man.
Cool. So the college thing. Now, did you just go for an undergrad? Did you get? Did you go even deeper in the hole for the graduate degree, or is that where it ended?
I went deeper in the hole. I took a semester off to just substitute teach and save some money, and I got engaged to my wife at like my senior year of college, and I kind of wanted to take some time to figure out what I wanted to do exactly. Because at that point, I thought about maybe going into grad school for composition, like for film scoring. Mm-hmm. And I eventually came to the conclusion that I just shouldn't have anybody else teaching me how to write my own songs. Which, I don't know, maybe that was like a moment of youthful ego, but I felt like I came out okay. So I think I made the right decision. I decided to go for another performance degree, a master's in jazz guitar. And I moved to Louisville and went to the University of Louisville and studied with, so my guitar teacher in undergrad was Glenn Ginn, amazing guitarist. And then at Louisville was Craig Wagner, another amazing guitarist, both with totally different styles. And I think one of my favorite things about learning from both of them was they were both all about letting you find your own voice, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
On top of, making sure you're technically proficient and you can read and knowing some tunes, they were all about fostering, your individualism. And they were always encouraging, like when I wanted to play my own original material on a recital or something, they're always about it. And they would throw me gigs too. Like when they had to sub out, they would call me for gigs, which I really appreciated. And there were a lot of gigs that I was just like totally not good enough for, but playing the gig made me better. Like Glenn Ginn, he did a lot of organ trio things with Steve Snyder, who was teaching in Indiana now, amazing organist, and Jason Tiemann, an amazing drummer who is in New York now playing with everybody. And he threw me a couple of those gigs, and I was just like, I didn't know how to actually sound like authentic with an organ trio because I just hadn't done it before. But doing it and being like, well, I'm here. I got to figure it out.
That didn't work. Yeah, let me try that. Let me try that.
It's and all those guys were so gracious and they were doing the good mentor thing of not being dicks, and they're just so fostering and teaching me by example and being warm and open to things. And the same with Craig. He has longtime gigs with this amazing vocalist in Louisville named Carly Johnson. And Craig's thing is all 7-string, playing bass lines and doing the whole 9 yards. And him and Carly together, when she's done singing, it's all Craig. And he threw me a couple of those gigs, and when she's done singing, it's all me. And I'm like, oh man, there's so much space to fill here. And it's a terrifying moment. So those were such huge moments of growth from both of those teachers and several other teachers I had too on different instruments. And yeah, it's just like, yeah, I look back on those experiences. Those were like really valuable things from my college teachers that existed outside of the college scenario that I was really grateful for, on top of all the great lessons and stuff. But
Yeah.
just getting to step into their shoes for a moment was like, oh, I got a lot of room to grow here. You know? Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was good. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Nope.
It's what was it, the Jerry Springer meme where it's like, it turns out that was a lie.
Yeah, it turns out that was a lie. That's hilarious.
So Brandon, you kind of mentioned, I'm going to backtrack a little, like you were talking about like Zappa and the Black Page and like this weird music and stuff, but why jazz? Like when did that become a thing for you?
Yeah, I mean, like I was, I'm a super nerd, like we all are. I don't want to speak for you guys, but I think we're all nerds here.
I think the 15 people that have subscribed all know we're nerds.
And they're nerds too. Yeah.
And they're probably nerds too.
Yeah, it's not a derogatory thing anymore.
Yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. But I was, I love research, man. Like I'm addicted. I've always been an addicted reader. Like I just would read everything I could find. And, when I was reading all these guitar magazines and growing up and finding these artists that were on the fringe of normalcy, like it was almost always a common pathway to jazz, like where it came from, because of the spirit of improvisation, the harmonic language, the rhythmic aspect, and the interplay. And part of the mystery of the music, not growing up with people who knew that stuff or people around that could do that to a high level, that was the big mystery for me. Like, how does all this stuff happen? And it made sense that jazz was the kind of nexus point where I needed to go, where I needed to travel to find all this information. And on the way, I discovered that in addition to loving Zappa and fusion, and I just love straight ahead jazz too, and I love all the eras of jazz music. And
was there something in particular that grabbed you at first?
I remember the first like jazz recording that just blew me away was that Wes Montgomery Smoking at the Half Note.
Oh yeah.
And that was because it was before college. I did an Aebersold camp. I did I think I was maybe a freshman in high school or something. My parents sent me. And the guitar teacher, Dave Stryker, who's awesome.
Oh, yeah, he's great.
He's killer. And, he recommended that. He was like on a list that he'd given everybody, like records you should have. And I just went down to the record store because they had a little record store set up there. And I was like, well, I got to buy that. And I remember putting it on. I was just like, man, this is sick. It's crazy. And then I also bought, that same day, I bought Mahavishnu Birds of Fire too, which was also sick. Yeah. And it's just like two disparate styles of jazz. Right. But I just remember hearing that and I was like, okay, this is what it means to like swing and play straight ahead, just arch top, badass guitar. And yeah, I mean, I think later on, like when I finally got to college, my preferred aesthetic, I started listening to a lot of Metheny, and then I heard Bill Frisell for the first time. And like Bill somehow had this like sensibility that really had connected to me because there's like a sense of like country in his playing and folk elements, and his like sense of economy of just like not really, he's like a cubist or something, he's like, doesn't give you all the information. And, that was really appealing to me. So for a long time, I just sounded like a Bill Frisell ripoff in college, just like little neck shakes, and I still do those from time to time. But
sure. There's plenty worse people to copy.
Yeah, but he's still my boy in many ways. But he was like somebody who took all that and then showed me how it can result in like a very unique voice, if that makes sense. Like he kind of distilled all that information from the past, like Jim Hall and Wes, and then like country guitar, isms, and then distilled it into his own unique. He's like a carnival master of the guitar, man. Like sometimes his music sounds like clown music, and it's amazing.
Yeah, the first time I heard him that I actually knew it was him was Naked City.
Oh yeah.
So like my journey with Bill has been like from there to everything else, which is really interesting.
That's amazing. Yeah, he's so freaky, man. He's like navigates all that territory with such he's not like an imposing personality either. Yeah, really, you know what I mean? Like you would expect, like when I first heard him on Naked City, like especially that tune where it's like Tennessee Flat Top Box, where it goes into like the death metal sections.
Yeah.
And it like goes back and forth between the country and then the death metal. And I was like, this dude must be crazy. Like he must like look insane with like tattoos on his face and like, and then like see him and he's just like a normal like, oh, hello, I'm Bill Frisell. Right. Nice to meet you. It's incredible, just incredible.
Very cool. Very cool. So you finish up your, I guess you could say, academic career in that regard. Did you have plans set out afterward? It's like, I'm going to do specific gigging, or I'm going to look for a teaching thing. Like, what was your, did you have anything planned for when you were done?
No, I'm terrible at planning. And it was kind of, I've always been inspired by the moment. Like for me, it's like, I had like the fact that I was like, had no plan, like was better than me having a plan in a way, because if I had a plan, I probably just been lazy and like not really followed through. But like not having a plan, I was just like, crap, now I have to pay bills and eat and like provide for my family. And like, it's like, maybe that's like some weird hillbilly energy that I have. I don't know. But for me, it's like, and not having a plan, like I didn't have a plan where we were going to move or anything. I kind of had this pipe dream of moving to New York, which I think everybody at some point has, because it's like the arts zone. Yeah. And, but that, like, we moved to Cincinnati because my wife did her master's degree here at CCM at the conservatory. And, I just went right into, like, for the first year, I was just going back to Louisville and gigging because that's where all my connections were. And I didn't really know many people up here. And I would go to jam sessions every now and then here in Cincinnati. And finally ended up meeting, the guys who were in my trio, Matt and Jeff, who've been my like longtime buddies and collaborators for like 7 or 8 years now. And that's how we met. And that got things kicked off in Cincinnati. But by the time she graduated and she was, working, and I was working, it just didn't make any sense to leave. We liked it. And I was making a living doing the things that I kind of wanted to do. And then I looked at New York, and I would travel to New York and I'd be like, you know what, this kind of sucks. I'd be like, I like being able to reach out in my music room and like not hit the wall. You know, like I like not having to walk over rat carcasses on my way to teach lessons
anymore.
Anymore, yeah. Now I just stop and take a bite, you know.
Well, you know it's clean in in Cincinnati, right?
Yeah. But yeah, man. I mean, like I think just not having a plan kind of opened me up to the possibility it could be anything. And I think, you know, just knowing other musicians older than me, I know they had to do many things to make it work. Like I knew that I'd have to teach. I knew that I'd have to be gigging. I knew that I had to be playing gigs that I didn't really like. Mm-hmm. I knew that I'd have to do just a multitude of things in music to cobble together a lifestyle, you know? So I didn't really set out like with plans to like get a doctorate, which I still don't think I will. Because I kind of wanted to get away from academia for a moment, honestly, just to kind of live outside of that world and just experience what it's like to be an artist, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, it was the time I know it's hard, but it was kind to me. Like I felt like it was just a good time. Like, especially in Cincinnati, like I feel like I moved here just a good time to try to do that, because there were like more venues, there were more musicians sticking around after their college experience here. So there's a lot of peers to get involved with and try new things. And that was just a good time. And it's still a good time. You know, it's different now, but yeah, I still, you know, COVID happened and, you know, I'm teaching, you know, we have plans for tours and all this stuff. And really just kind of having that attitude of going with the flow, just following the direction of the wind. You know, it's like, well, I just got to teach a lot from home. And then like, I'm getting a chance to do other things that I love doing, like producing people's records or mixing. And I've been doing a lot of session work online, like recording guitar parts for various things and doing music engraving and arranging for people. And just,
oh yeah,
I love doing that stuff. I love doing that stuff, man. It's so fun. And it's giving me a chance.
Like you're doing it with ink?
Oh, well, I'm not doing it with ink, but I refer to it as engraving because it sounds fancier than putting it into Sibelius.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
I mean, there's plenty of people that still do that though. Like
Yeah, I mean, it's badass. Like my handwriting looks like a terrible like doctor's note. Like
yeah,
it's not good.
Make it readable for everybody.
So. I had transcribed a Bobby Salvaggio thing once, and I kind of played it, or I shared it on Facebook or something. He's like, "Hey, can you send me that transcription?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't think you want to see that." Like, it just looks like blob, you know, on the paper. It's
yeah.
So I hear you there.
Yeah, man.
And I'm like, I know I could put it into Finale, but
yeah, down the road, just you can get it in eventually.
It was only like 15 years ago, so we're
well, you know, that's pretty good considering your rate at releasing albums.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's about the rate for me at the moment.
I had to take that shot, Tim.
Yeah, I complain to Adam all the time about been working on this one record for like 8-9 years. And I was gonna release it like any time now, and then I got the master, and I wasn't really happy with it, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to do the master, and I don't know. It's one of those things.
It's just marinating, man. It's gonna have a great flavor when it finally comes out.
Sure.
I've had a couple records that I've been sitting on for like 2 years myself, like, and I'm like, one of them is a Fourth Kind record that I think we might have talked about when I came up with Matt. Like we're just going to redo a few things on it that, you know, after we listen back, we're like, we think we can do this better now than we did when we played it the first time, or we can get better tones, and it's like such a thing where it's like low priority to put out in that range of everything else like I got going on. It's just like, this can wait as long as it needs to be as good as I want it to be.
Right.
Because I feel like certain forms of music lend themselves to that. Like if it's like a jazz record where we're playing tunes and it's in the moment, it's a picture of that time,
then sure, I'm like, I'll put it out. Like the other day, I put out a tune the next day after we recorded it. Like we went down to the studio, and I was like, mix it that night and put it out the next day because it's in the moment. But like this Fourth Kind stuff, it's like a rock record where I kind of want the production to just be on point and all the parts to be on point.
Yeah. See,
it's
Adam?
like,
see?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's on 8 years. And it's not.
You go through these different phases. So you do like right when it was 8 years ago, I recorded a bunch of stuff, and then you're like, yeah, I'm not quite finished, and then a couple years later, you're like, well, that wasn't good enough, and then you redo all that.
Now listen, I'm picking, and I'm the same culprit. It's like I've re-recorded my classical album 3 different times. So same material, just I think, oh, I got better, so I got to go back and redo that.
Yeah, there's that whole thing too.
That's the big mind job with me. You know, it's like, oh, I can do that a lot better now, or I like my tone better, or I like this new mic position that I came up with the other day, or whichever. So run the whole program again, and then sit there and start the editing process, and it's. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I just got to get it freaking done. Like, done, and put it out there and not care anymore. But I think part of it, I think we're all maybe wired to this degree. It's like we have the demands on ourselves musically that we're always striving to meet. Like, regardless of what we're doing, we're always pushing our boundaries and getting better. So when we revisit old things that aren't public yet, we're like, oh, I could totally do a better job with this. So we go taking it apart and putting it all into its thing, and it's like, oh, well, no, I'm going to wait on that. And then you kind of like cover it up and put it off to the side because something new and shiny kind of comes along. But I don't know. I can't preach to how to get past that hurdle. So hopefully at some point we'll all, I mean, Brandon clearly has at least some methodology to putting things out more than both of us combined. So perhaps you could speak to that. But just in general, it's like, I think that striving for consistent excellence can be a detrimental thing of actually putting something out because you're always your own worst critic. So.
For sure. I mean, I remember like my first record I did with the quartet I have now, like the record Infinite Loop that I put out in like 2015 or 2014. Like I decided to mix it myself, but which I do on most of my projects, I mix myself. But I was so like unhappy with my own performance on that record, which I still am. I still hear it and I'm like, oh God, I played that note. Why? But I couldn't mix it because I was so focused on my performance. Like I couldn't listen to it any other way. So I ended up sitting on it for too long and getting frustrated. So I just sent it off to like Amsterdam. I was like, here's a guy, I've liked his mixes before on something. And I was like, you mix it. I was like, I can't listen to my own playing anymore, but this just needs to be out so I can move on to another batch of music, you know?
Yeah, that you can complain about.
Yeah. Exactly.
Here's a question for you.
Yeah.
And Tim as well. Outside of the work scenario, in other words, work mastering and mixing and everything else, do you listen to your own music?
Sometimes. I would say sometimes. I do it to make sure I did a good job. Like
disconnecting from that. Like
okay.
Like disconnecting from like the analytical stuff.
It's out in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't listen to it anymore after that, really. Yeah. Unless like there's one track that I've gone back and listened to a lot that's not released yet, but it's kind of a meme amongst me and my boys because the mix is so good on it and the drums sound so fat. It's on the Fourth Kind record that is yet to be released, but that one track is so good that we just like whenever we get together, we're just like we're gonna put that on and listen to how because it's just like we're all like. That came out of our hands. That's like, we're like that one's really sick. But then we listen to the other ones. We're like, okay, we sucked on that one, but but then there's one track, and yeah, that's worthy
I wonder
of that.
After it comes out, yeah, I don't know.
After it comes out, maybe I'll be like, this is horrible. I never want to hear it again.
I was about to go to the same spot there, Tim. It's like it's fine now until it gets out there, and then it's like, oh, never mind, I'm not touching that.
Yeah.
It's funny how you can kind of dig something that you make, you know, sometimes it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like it happens. Hopefully you're making stuff that you like in general.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, like at some point, it's like you're not capable of liking it anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's little things that I hear my stuff or whatever, and I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool, or that's something. Wow, how did I do that, or where did that sound come from? But yeah, I'm kind of the same. I mostly can't stand listening to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny that you were talking about the mixing thing. Is like any project that I've been in, pretty much completely, that I didn't mix myself. Like I'm like, man, they did such a bad job. Like, at least when I hear the guitar, I'm like, that's not the guitar sounds like,
Yeah.
So I struggle like letting go of control of it. Even like this master, I sent it off. It's probably a fine master, but I'm like, that's not the way I would have done it. So
I'm very similar. Like I have like really strong feelings about like the just the imaging and the
right.
sound and the spectrum of everything. And I have just this in my mind, this picture of what everything should sound like. That to me is like a unique sound that I want for my own stuff. And like I've just had so many experiences where, and it's really nobody's fault because it's like everybody's been perfectly good engineers and can do a great job, but it's just like so many experiences where it's just like, oh, this is jazz, so let me just do my jazz thing on it, and it's like, well, it's different though. Like, we got to pay attention to the minute details instead of just saying, oh, this is jazz, so I'm going to pan this over here and this over here, and then we're done. So it's I always have like ideas, and to me, like for some tunes, I don't want to say like I try not to overproduce things, but like especially on some of my newer stuff that comes out, I like to have like a little bit of a hand in like, I might automate a little bit of more like a delay in the Rhodes or something just to give it some space. And because some of my favorite records in the jazz and fusion world were like those 70s records, like the Herbie stuff, where there's just so many spacey sounds and like it's like you're floating in outer space, and like I want to kind of get some of those moments. Like the tune that I put out last year called The Watchmaker, and
I think I remember that.
Aquatic, I put out in a single called Aquatic. I tried to get those vibes, not like in a blatant like rip-off way, but just kind of give a blanket, like a bed of ambience underneath everything that kind of makes it feel like a band playing like on a holographic cloud in the future or something.
Right. I think it's perfectly acceptable to put production into a jazz record.
Yeah.
I think it's all right.
Yeah, Wayne Shorter did it. Why can't we?
Yeah, right.
So it's great, man. I mean, I just embrace all those sounds. So to me, it's fun, and now having a studio of our own, it's fun to get to try things on other people's stuff too, which is nice.
Yeah. I bet.
Yeah.
So, what's maybe a gear question? So what's your main things you're going through these days? And like I guess and I see you switching guitars a lot, and I know you just like guitars.
Yeah. But guitars are sweet.
So do you have like different ones you think, okay, this is Spherical Agenda setup, here's my fourth kind setup, here's my this setup, here's that setup? Do you have, and I guess what are those? What are you?
So I would say like my main axes right now, my collection has grown to like 28 guitars at the moment, which I know some dudes that have an insane amount of guitars, but to me that feels like insane because this room isn't that big, and I have to keep some of them over at the studio. There's like some over here.
Retirement plan, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I have a Mulan Strat that I really love. It's just beautiful, and I got it from a student of mine and a friend, and he bought it used in LA, and it turns out it was like formerly owned by Jason Mraz. Like it was built by Mulan, and they presented it to Jason Mraz at the South Korean Olympics, and like he performed with it, and it's like totally wild. Like I didn't know that. I had the guitar for years, and when I ordered my telly from Mulan a couple months ago, and I gave him the serial number, like, oh, you have Jason Mraz's guitar. I was like, well, that's cool.
Like, you tell that to everyone, don't you?
Yeah, they tell everybody, oh, we built all these for Jason Mraz. But I really love that Strat. It's got a special thing about it. I mean, he makes them to be like as close as you can to like a vintage like Strat, and I feel like, and I got to play a 62 Strat not too long ago. One of my friends has one, and it's pretty dang close, so pretty cool. I have a Cummins GCS, the ebony board, spruce top, kind of semi-hollow, that I do for a lot of more kind of clean, straight ahead kind of jazz sounds, and like kind of more contemporary, like Rosenwinkel-y kind of things. That's a wonderful guitar. One of my good friends, James Gay, is a luthier, really skilled luthier. He built me a guitar. It's a kind of a prototype of something. Here, I can show you guys that one. It's out.
Let's see it.
It's out in the wild. Let's see here. Let's get the earphones back in so I can hear you. But yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember you shared that. Yeah, that thing looks great.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. It's that's his brand, Gayer. That's like his family's ancient name is like Gayer, Gayir or something like that. But it's basically like a prototype because he's living in Singapore right now, working for a big music company, doing like all their like big repair jobs. And he prototyped this out and sent it to me to kind of review and just to have and play. It's wonderful because when he moves back to the U.S. and I think later this year, he's going to start building to order like for people, and that's like kind of going to be his main core model.
That's cool.
So cool. It's really nice. It's I would put it right up there with Sir's and Tom Anderson's and all that stuff.
Like Tom Anderson, Sir
look, that vibe look to
which
it.
I love. That looks great.
Yeah. It's just super. It's like super light and super resonant. I think it's chambered and it's got like the nice, tall, skinny frets and just a breeze to play. So I've been using that one a lot with Spherical Agenda. On top of like I've got a couple of those '80s S series that for the neon vibes.
I told Brandon that you basically can't find Saber S Ibanez's for lefty like ever.
Nope.
Yeah.
So he did send me one. It was a couple months ago.
Yeah, I found one a while back.
I'll see him sometimes, and I think it was gone like in like minutes, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. The lefty market is a challenging one.
Yeah. You're gonna get what you want. You're gonna pay a lot. That's just
And you just have to get. There's a lot of like getting lucky.
Yeah.
You never get to try anything.
Pretty much. I mean, that's what this was. This guy was a blind order from China, Australia, China-ish. So
that looks sweet. I love it.
It's great. I mean, I really wanted a Strandberg, really, really, really did. But I wanted an 8-string, and they never were going to do an 8-string run lefty. So I was looking around, and Mayonnaise and those brands, and I'm like, I just can't justify spending that much money on an electric. Like another classical, sure, not a problem, but not on an electric. That's it's fun and I'll write with it, but it's not my workhorse. So I found these guys. God, how the hell did I find them? I think just Google searching 8-string left-handed, and DOC guitars came up, and so I did some research, and forum dived, YouTube dived, and everything else, and nobody said anything bad about them, which was pretty good considering it was coming from China, because you just it's China. You don't know what you're going to get. Those guitars that we were both looking at, they had some pretty cool lefty ones. Literally, the reviews were like, "Don't buy this guitar." They nope, nada. And this is from like their artist not signature models, but the endorsees. Like like I endorse. Then they sent me a guitar, and like the guy like held the neck and pushed and like bent the neck up type of thing.
Oh wow,
like, it's a cool trick.
This is the third one I've gotten like this. And I'm like, woof, forget it. So this one, with all that, for I think it was $900 for a fan fret.
Wow.
The pickups are killer. Like I can't believe how good the thing sounds, and it's it's minimalist. It's just a volume, 3-way switch, done.
What's the brand called again?
GOC.
Okay.
That's the little insignia. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
That thing right there.
That's cool.
But they're on Facebook. You can check them out. they were really good to talk to, like, because I kept going back and forth with them, it's just like touching and coming back. I don't know. And then I finally decided to do it. Once they decided on the lefty run, I was talking with my wife. I'm like, do you mind if I just get one? She's like, if it'll shut you up about buying a left-handed 8-string, yes. And she didn't really say that, but she's like, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, exactly. There was the undertones of that, So I just ordered it, and that was right when COVID really hit. So it was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to see this thing because it's coming from China. God only knows what's going on. And for the long time, it was like cracked in the middle of somewhere China and just sat there. And so we had like a vacation scheduled. We were renting a house somewhere. And so we left to go do that. And of course, as soon as we leave, that's when it shows up at my door. And the post office, we'll hold it for 3 days. And I'm like, 3 days? You're supposed to be gone for a week. And unluckily, a hurricane hit where we were at, and we couldn't go on vacation, so we had to turn around and come home. I grabbed the guitar, and the rest is history. But I like it. I'm pretty impressed with the quality of the guitar, especially for the money. That's great. But this is not about me, so let's refocus because I got 2 burning questions I want to ask you.
Well, that's a sick guitar, man. I love it.
Thank you.